The report was only 3 lines long. No victim located, no signs of violence, cause of death undetermined. And yet, the word murder sat at the top of the file. No one could explain why. It began with absence, not the dramatic kind. No screams, no frantic calls, no bloodstains soaked into carpet. Just a man who stopped existing where he was expected to be. Elias Rowe was the kind of person people remembered noticing without remembering why. He lived alone in a narrow apartment above a closed bookstore, paid his rent early, worked late, spoke politely, left no impression strong enough to linger. Which is why it took 9 days for anyone to realize something was wrong. His employer noticed first. Elias never missed work. He never called in sick. When he failed to show up 3 days in a row, they assumed illness. On the 4th day, concern. By the 9th, someone called the building manager. The door to Elias's apartment was locked. The windows were closed. Inside, everything was exactly where it should be. Too exactly. There was no sign of struggle, no overturned furniture, no broken glass. The bed was made. The sink was dry. A half-used bar of soap sat untouched. The refrigerator hummed quietly, filled with food that hadn't spoiled yet. On the kitchen counter lay Elias's wallet, cash inside, cards untouched. His phone was on the nightstand, charged, powered on, unread messages waiting. If Elias had left voluntarily, he had done so without money, without identification, and without telling anyone. If he had been taken, there was no evidence of force. If he had been killed, there was no body. And yet, investigators marked the case as homicide before the week ended, not because of evidence, because of instinct. The first anomaly was time. Elias's phone records showed activity well past the moment neighbors swore they had last seen him. Messages were marked as read after midnight. A calendar reminder was dismissed in the early morning hours. But location data placed the phone inside the apartment the entire time. No movement, no signal drop, just activity without presence. The second anomaly was silence. No neighbors reported sounds, no arguments, no footsteps in the hallway, no doors opening or closing. It was as if Elias had been erased quietly enough that reality didn't notice. Detectives searched the apartment again and again. They checked vents, pipes, walls, floorboards, every place a body could conceivably be hidden. There was nothing. No blood under blacklight, no trace DNA that didn't belong, no fibers out of place. The apartment was not cleaned. It had never been disturbed. That frightened them more than chaos would have. The case stalled almost immediately. Without a body, there was no proof of death. Without proof of death, there could be no murder. And yet, something about the apartment resisted closure. One detective noted that the air felt wrong, like a room that had been vacated too suddenly for the space to catch up. The comment was laughed off, officially. Then the call came in. A woman reported seeing Elias Rowe on a bus across town. She was certain. She described his coat, his posture, the way he tilted his head slightly when he listened. She even described a scar on his left hand that had never been documented. Officers pulled surveillance footage from the bus. The footage showed a man sitting alone. His face was partially obscured by glare, but the coat matched, the posture matched, the scar matched. What didn't match was the timestamp. The footage was recorded 12 hours after Elias's phone had last been active inside his locked apartment. They reviewed the footage frame by frame. At no point did the man look directly into the camera. At no point did he interact with anyone else. At no point did he get off the bus. The footage ended. The man did not. When detectives returned to Elias's apartment, something small had changed, something no one could explain. A chair at the kitchen table was no longer pushed in, not overturned, not moved far, just slightly out of place. No fingerprints, no explanation. They checked Elias's past. No criminal record, no deaths, no threats, no known conflicts. But there was one detail buried in his employment file that had been overlooked, a handwritten note from a supervisor years earlier. Elias has a habit of staying late even when necessary, says it helps him think.
Think about what? No one knew. No one had ever asked. The murder designation was questioned. Superiors wanted the case downgraded to missing person, but the lead investigator refused. He argued something simple. You don't disappear this cleanly unless someone wants you gone. But there's no evidence of anyone else, they said. That's the point, he replied. The third anomaly appeared 2 weeks later. Elias's email account sent a message. One sentence, no subject line. I'm still here. The IP address traced back to his apartment. The apartment was empty. Technicians examined the email headers. No signs of spoofing, no malware, no external access. The email had been sent from the same device Elias used daily. The device was still on the nightstand, unmoved. Fear entered the investigation quietly. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. The case was behaving like a closed loop. Everything pointed back to the apartment. The apartment pointed back to Elias, and Elias was nowhere. Late one night, the lead investigator sat alone in the apartment, lights off, listening, not for sound, for absence. At exactly the moment he considered leaving, the refrigerator clicked off. The room went silent. Then his phone buzzed. An email notification from Elias Rowe, sent just now, same message, I'm still here. The investigator left the apartment and never returned alone again. By the end of the month, the case file was officially titled A Murder with No Body, No Weapon, No Witness. Not because they could prove it, but because every other explanation had failed. The city moved on. The apartment remained empty, but every few weeks something changed inside. A chair moved, a light turned off, a message sent, always small, always undeniable, always impossible. And somewhere in the system, the case was flagged with a single internal note. If a body appears, reassess. Until then, observe. The murder had already happened. The question was not who did it. The question was how someone could be removed without ever leaving.
The evidence that couldn't exist. The evidence arrived without announcing itself. No envelope slid under a door, no anonymous tip rang a phone in the middle of the night. It appeared quietly, embedded inside systems that were never meant to speak unless something had already gone wrong. The first piece came from transit records. An analyst noticed a discrepancy while auditing archived surveillance footage. A bus route Elias Rowe was supposedly seen on showed an anomaly, an entry marked as passenger present without a corresponding exit. At first, it was assumed to be a glitch. Cameras missed things all the time. But when the footage was reviewed again, something unsettling emerged. The man believed to be Elias boarded the bus. He sat. He never moved. And when the bus reached the final stop, the camera showed an empty seat. No one stood up. No one walked past the lens. He was simply gone between frames. Frame by frame analysis revealed nothing obvious. No blur, no distortion, no cut. Just absence. The timestamp jumped forward by less than a second. That was all it took. Detectives began collecting what they called negative evidence. Not what was found, what wasn't. No exit footage, no payment record beyond boarding, no reflection in the window glass when other passengers shifted. In one frame, Elias's outline appeared faint, as if the camera struggled to hold him. In the next, the seat was empty. The second piece of evidence came from Elias's bank. A transaction attempt had been logged. Not completed, attempted. A withdrawal request made at an ATM 2 blocks from his apartment. The card was never inserted. The PIN was never entered. The machine recorded only one thing: presence, as if someone had stood there long enough to be noticed, but not long enough to be seen. Technicians dismissed it as sensor error, until it happened again. Different ATM, different night, same account, same incomplete interaction. Each time the location circled back toward Elias's apartment, like a radius tightening. The third piece of evidence frightened the lead investigator enough that he stopped sleeping in his own home. A neighbor's security camera across the hall from Elias's apartment activated at 3 in the morning. Motion detected. The hallway lights flickered on. The footage showed Elias's door. Closed. Locked. Then the handle turned. Slowly. The door did not open. The handle returned to its original position. Motion detection stopped. No one was in the hallway. The building manager insisted the footage was old. The timestamp proved otherwise. The camera had recorded activity from a man officially listed as missing, possibly dead. Psychological profiling offered no comfort. If Elias had staged his disappearance, he had done so without resources, without preparation, and without motive. If someone else was involved, they had done so without leaving a single trace. If this was a hoax, it was the most patient one anyone had ever seen. And if it was none of those things, then the investigation was chasing something that did not behave like a crime. The case expanded quietly. Detectives searched for similar incidents. Not disappearances, residues. They found 3. Different cities, different years, identical patterns. A person vanished without evidence. Systems continued to register them afterward. Transit logs, email pings, security sensors. Always brief, always incomplete, always ending near the place they had last existed. In each case, the investigation collapsed. Files were closed. The disappearances were reclassified as voluntary. But one detail connected them. Every case had been labeled homicide before being downgraded. Every one. The original investigators had felt it too. That instinct, that sense that something had ended even though nothing had been found. The lead investigator returned to Elias's apartment with a forensic specialist who specialized in environmental anomalies. Not officially. The specialist brought no badge, no uniform, only instruments. The readings were unremarkable until they reached the bedroom. The air pressure fluctuated, slightly, enough to notice. The specialist frowned. "It's like the room is correcting itself," he said. "Correcting from what?" He didn't answer. They placed motion sensors in the apartment, not cameras, not audio, just presence detection. For days, nothing happened. Then, at exactly the same hour Elias's email had been sent weeks earlier, the sensor activated. The reading lasted less than 2 seconds, just long enough to register shape, not mass, not movement, shape. The data was logged, printed, filed, then disappeared from the system overnight. No deletion record, no access log. The printout remained. The digital trace did not. The pressure from superiors intensified. The case was becoming an embarrassment. "You have nothing," they said. "No body, no suspect, no crime." The lead investigator responded with a question. "Then why does the apartment keep reacting?" No one answered. A court order was prepared to officially declare Elias Rowe deceased. Before it could be filed, another message arrived. Not an email, not a text, a voicemail, left on the lead investigator's personal phone. There was no number attached. The message contained no words, only breathing, slow, measured, close. The same recording lasted just long enough for the voicemail system to timestamp it. The timestamp matched the moment the motion sensor had activated in the apartment. The investigator listened to the message once, then deleted it. Not because he wanted to forget, because he didn't want proof. The case was no longer about solving a murder. It was about defining one. If someone could be removed without violence, without tools, without witnesses, was it still murder? Or was it something older, quieter, and far more difficult to stop? The file grew thicker. The answers grew thinner. And somewhere inside a locked apartment that no one officially lived in anymore, something continued to behave as if it had never left. The murder still had no body,
No weapon, no witness. But now it had evidence, and none of it should have existed.
The person who benefited from nothing. The break did not come from discovery. It came from accounting. Someone somewhere had gained something from Elias Rowe's disappearance. Not money, not property, not freedom. Something quieter, something easier to overlook. Time. Elias's position at work had been filled within a week. That was normal. What wasn't normal was how smoothly it happened. No backlog, no disruption, no learning curve. The replacement slid into Elias's responsibilities as if the role had been waiting for him all along. The lead investigator requested personnel files. The replacement employee had transferred internally from another department that had no record of his prior output. Performance reviews were blank, project histories were vague. Yet every supervisor described him the same way: reliable, unremarkable, already familiar. Already familiar with work no one had trained him to do. The investigator began tracing timelines instead of motives. He mapped Elias's last 6 months against internal company restructuring. Departments merged, positions vanished, responsibilities redistributed. In every instance, Elias's tasks were absorbed seamlessly, too seamlessly. It was as if his work had already been duplicated or rehearsed. The replacement employee was interviewed. He was polite, calm, unconcerned. He insisted he had never met Elias Rowe. When shown a photograph, he paused, not in recognition, but in confusion. "I feel like I should know him," he said, "but I don't." The investigator asked him to describe his typical workday. As he spoke, the investigator noticed something unsettling. The routine matched Elias's exactly. Same late hours, same unnecessary lingering, same explanation. "It helps me think." That phrase appeared again and again, in reports, in interviews, in places it shouldn't. The investigator widened the scope. He reviewed similar cases from other cities. Not disappearances, transitions. Jobs filled instantly, apartments reassigned without delay, social spaces where a person's absence caused no disruption at all. In each case, the missing individual had no enemies, no debts, no unresolved conflicts. They were not removed because they mattered. They were removed because they fit. The realization hit slowly. Elias Rowe had not been targeted. He had been replaced. This reframed everything. The messages, the sightings, the residue of presence. They weren't attempts to return. They were echoes, artifacts of a system ensuring continuity. The lead investigator met with a behavioral analyst in confidence. He described the pattern without mentioning names. The analyst listened, then asked a single question. What if the disappearance wasn't the event? What if it was the adjustment? That night, the investigator returned to Elias's apartment one final time. Not to search, to wait. He sat in the dark, lights off, breathing slow, matching the rhythm of the building. Hours passed. Then the air shifted. Not dramatically, subtly. The same sensation reported by witnesses who never vanished. The feeling of being slightly out of place in time. The investigator spoke aloud. "Why Elias?" Nothing answered. Then, from the kitchen, a sound. Not a footstep, not movement. A chair sliding back, exactly as it had been reported weeks earlier. The investigator did not turn around. He felt it then. Not fear, recognition. Whatever had happened to Elias wasn't about harm. It was about balance. The case file ended with a final internal note. No signatures, no authorization, just a conclusion written in careful, restrained language. There is no evidence of criminal action by any individual or group.
There is no identifiable perpetrator. There is no recoverable victim. However, there is a consistent pattern of removal followed by functional replacement, suggesting a non-random corrective process. Recommendation: do not pursue further. Observation only increases recurrence. The case was closed. Not solved. Closed. Elias Rowe was legally declared dead 6 months later. No funeral was held. No body was buried. His apartment was leased to someone new. The chair remained pushed in. The replacement employee continued working. He never missed a day, never stayed late, never felt the need to think longer than necessary. And somewhere in the system, banking, transit, digital logs, a few final artifacts lingered before fading entirely. Unread messages marked as read, motion detected without movement, presence without proof. Then, nothing. The murder with no body, no weapon, no witness was never prosecuted because there was no one to charge and nothing to stop. The investigator retired early. Years later, when asked about the strangest case of his career, he never mentioned Elias Rowe. He only said this: "Some crimes don't destroy lives, they replace them. And if no one notices the difference, the system considers it justice." The file remains archived, unlabeled, unrequested, because some murders leave no evidence, and some leave only a world that continues as if nothing went wrong.